Ladies and gentlemen, sports fans alike, welcome to another edition of Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago, one of the couple, two, three best podcasts around. So sit back, grab yourself a cold one and a Polish sausage, park your keister in the French room, and listen to Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago.
In Chicago, you know that all sports rock. The Bears, Hawks, Bulls, Cubs, and Sox. Pick your favorite, you can choose, as long as the Packers lose. For everything you need to know, it's Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago. Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago.
Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago. This is your hosts, Alex and Sean. On this episode, we are going to be talking about follow-up to something that you probably heard on this show several months ago. We've got Bulls talk, Blackhawks talk, and some baseball talk because there are thoughts. But first, I'd like to thank our sponsor, the Rockford Ice Hogs. If you're not familiar with the Rockford Ice Hogs, they're the AHL minor league affiliate of the Chicago Blackhawks. What does that mean for you? You get to see the stars of tomorrow today at family-friendly, affordable prices. So make sure you head on over to icehogs.com, get yourself a hat, shirt, jersey, tickets, and more. Tell them Swerski Sports sent you. Alex, how have you been?
I have been fine, doing just fine. Can't complain. I really wish that we were closer to having a baseball season than not, but unfortunately, that's not the case. And I don't like cold weather, but other than that, things are good. Things are good.
You know, I really thought like the weather was turning and we're like, man, maybe we're going to get an early spring because the last couple of days haven't been so bad. And I even told my wife and daughter this morning, I was like, you know what? I think winter is over. And then I walked outside and I was like, God, I'm an idiot. It's cold. It was brutal this morning.
Yeah, it was. I mean, I was out this afternoon with some people and, you know, we were hanging out at Woodfield Mall and, you know, inside the mall, you're fine. Everything's good. You're indoors. It's heated. It's the right temperature. But walking from my car to the mall door and then walking, you know, out from the mall back to my car, I was parked like a few rows back. So I wasn't like right next to the door. So I had to walk a few rows to get there. And even just walking those few hundred feet, like I started running because it was so dang cold out. I think the thermometer in my car read like 18, 19 degrees. And, you know, you'd think you'd be kind of used to that by now. But the few days before that, it was like, what, 40, 41, 42 outside?
You know, it's funny because like just those couple days of the warmer weather just like makes your body adjust. And then when it throws you for a loop with these like, yeah, I think it was down to like 14 or 15 this morning when I left the house. It just suddenly your body's like, no, I'm not used to this. I'm not ready for this. Even though you've been dealing with it, you just get a couple days break. It's like coming back to work from a vacation.
Yeah, and the thing too is it could really make a huge difference if there's even the slightest bit of like breeze when it's this cold outside, or if there's like sun or overcast, like that stuff can make a big difference. And when I was walking out today, there was the slightest breeze and there was no sun. It was overcast. And that made it so much worse because, you know, there have been days where it's in the teens, but it's like really sunny out and there's no wind whatsoever. It feels a heck lot better when there's just the slightest addition of wind and like no sun out.
Right. So where do you want to start today?
Well, okay. So I got baseball thoughts, plenty of baseball thoughts. And it's kind of ironic because there is no Major League Baseball in the foreseeable future. We've gotten some information from Rob Manfred the other day, who I think should be talking through that one character from the book of Boba Fett who has like the tail heads, you know, the one guy that's with the mayor. He's indisposed right now. Like that should be the guy communicating this whole thing. But here, I wanted to start the show out with a debate. If there's even a debate, if our opinions are the same or different, but we could talk about it. we pretty much got confirmation that whenever the hell there is a baseball season, and we'll get to all that in a bit, but I wanted to start with this conversation. Sounds like we're getting a universal DH. And you and I, both being Cubs fans, we have been raised as National League fans. So we are used to watching the pitcher hit the old traditional way. And as a longtime Cubs and National League fan, for the most part, I supported the National League rules. I said, you know what, 9 players on the field, those guys hit. And I feel like the traditional way is fine. And having 2 leagues with 2 different rules, maybe distinguished a little bit between each league. So that was kind of interesting. But here's the thing. I've kind of changed my tone on it. I've talked about many times how much I think it was just bull crap that season in 2020, the 60 games. But one thing that I took away from that 60 game season is they had a universal DH that year. And I watched those games, not once saying, man, I really wish Kyle Hendricks was batting right now in the 9th spot. Or, man, I remember when managers used to make double switches and they had to put all this strategy. I didn't think about that. I didn't think about it once. So I don't really care that they're changing the rule. In fact, I think this rule change is good for the Cubs, a team that's in a transition phase and is looking to fill all sorts of holes. This gives them an opportunity to maybe open up the book a little bit. Maybe you are more tempted to bring an Anthony Rizzo type back, knowing that you can DH him at certain times and play Frank Schwindel or vice versa. It also gives you kind of a
Nick Castellanos cough.
Yeah, if they're willing to spend that money, absolutely sure. You don't have to worry about him fitting in the outfield or whatever. Hell, I even said, bring Kyle Schwarber back. You could play him at DH, and if you need him to play some games in left field, he's not a great left fielder. We all know that, but he can do it every now and then. It wouldn't be as big of a deal. And then maybe you give Contreras some time at DH too, so he's not catching so many innings because he has had his nagging injuries. So I'm fine with the DH. I'm really okay with it. I'm not sitting here pining for pitchers hitting, and the strategy behind it. I understand if people like it. It doesn't really do much for me. Oh, wow, a double switch. Okay.
5 years ago, 3 years ago, I probably would have been very anti the universal DH.
I probably would have too.
And I mean, it's because I grew up with it. Baseball has all this tradition. Like football changes rules every year.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there was no celebrations for a while. Then they went back to celebrations. Then there's these team celebrations, and then you can't look at somebody or else that's a flag. And you just get used to it. Basketball. I mean, I'm old enough to remember when you actually could travel. So hockey, I remember, I mean, they completely changed how that game is played, shootouts and overtimes and 3-on-3.
Hybridizing, all that stuff.
So those sports, you're like, okay, though there are big changes happen, you roll with it. But baseball was always like that constant, that I guess that security blanket. It's always the same. Things really don't change. And you're like, well, we're gonna change something. And a few years ago, I'd just been like, no, you can't change this. But I don't know, as I start really thinking about it, I was like, to your point, well, why do I care? Like, 90% of pitchers can't hit worth a crap. And it's, and watching a pitcher pitch to a pitcher is literally the worst thing I can imagine.
Well, and here's another thing to keep in mind too. I feel like half the pitchers don't even bother. Like they just go up there, put the bat on their shoulder, wait for the 3 strikes to go by and head back to the dugout.
Yeah. When I was younger, like pitchers were at least like good at bunting. Like you just see them throw down a bunt. I mean, well, not good bunters, not like Brett Butler, where they would bunt for a base hit. But like they knew how to lay down a bunt. They would lay down the bunt, they'd move the guy over. And it just seems like a lot of that's lost. So it's like, really, what's it matter? Why do I care? Why do I care so much? And you're right, having the COVID shortened season, and I just didn't miss it. And we're gonna get the universal DH, and we all knew it was coming. We saw it coming from a mile away, and it was
inevitable.
It was when is it going to happen? And I think this is probably, the ultimate time. I mean, we thought maybe after they put it in for COVID, maybe we won't revert back, but they did. And now it's going to be done. When we see baseball, will be universal DH, and I'm fine with that. But I would have a tweak to it if it was up to me.
Oh,
the tweak would be, you don't have the designated hitter. You could pick whoever you want him to hit for. Like, so if Shohei Ohtani's pitching, like Shohei Ohtani's pitching, why are you going to DH for him? Pinch hit for your catcher or your second baseman, whoever you want to be to DH for. If you feel that your pitcher can hit, like, there's times when Jake Arrieta was not the worst hitter on the field.
No, he wasn't. And I'll tell you right now, who would hate this rule if he was still playing would be Carlos Zambrano.
Yeah. And so, why does it have to be for the pitcher? I mean, I sort of get, like, it historically has been, but why can't it be for whoever you want to pinch hit or to DH for?
Imagine if we could have Jason Hayward in right field of his defense and we didn't have to have him in the lineup.
Nick Castellanos at the plate and Jason Hayward in the outfield.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Imagine that.
But I think that gives you more options. So, like, if you could do something like that, I would even be more pro the DH rule. But that would at least give you something else to work with, because it would, because there's eventually going to be more pitchers that like to hit or good at hitting or are dual role like Ohtani, and why force them to have the bat taken out of their hands?
And the thing too is when you factor this all in, we could be looking at scenarios maybe someday where we do see more Shohei Ohtanis. Like, could you imagine if we got more pitchers who could also hit, but they DH instead? I'm not saying there's going to be a ton of them in the future. Shohei Ohtani is extremely rare, but hey, you never know. Maybe we'll see more in the future, and this could kind of make things easier because, if you have a dual baseball player like that, a two-way player like that, something so rare like Shohei Ohtani, if you're able to be blessed with that, then you can have him in the lineup when he's not pitching. And then when he's pitching, he just focuses on pitching. That's what Shohei Ohtani does. It'd be cool if we saw more of that. I mean, I'm not saying we're going to see a ton more of that, but I wouldn't be surprised if another Shohei Ohtani type, maybe comes along from wherever, whether it's, somebody from the United States, another player over from overseas, you never know. Another one might come, and, with these rule changes and maybe with what Shohei Ohtani is doing, maybe that will open the door for other players to kind of try to be that two-way player. You never know. It'd be cool to see. Because, I mean, Shohei Ohtani is just awesome. I mean, like, you would think a guy like that would be like, okay, if he can both hit and pitch, maybe he's a solid pitcher at best and maybe like a 220 hitter that can maybe hit 18 home runs. But Shohei Ohtani is elite at both. Wouldn't it be cool if we saw more of that?
Oh, that would be awesome.
And you see those home runs that Shohei Ohtani hits. I mean, there are vapor trails after those baseballs. And it is so aggravating that him and Mike Trout have to waste on such a blah team year after year.
It's true. Mike Trout is just wasting away. He's running out of real estate in his prime.
Yeah, and think about it too. He's had some injuries recently as well.
It would really suck to see him never get an opportunity to play.
He's only been to the postseason once.
As many times as Mitchell Trubisky. Oh wait, no, now he's been twice. Sorry.
Ooh. Well, wouldn't that be 3 times?
Trubisky?
Yeah. 2018, 2020, and then the Bills this year.
I don't count 2020.
Hey, now the Bears overcame adversity, finished 8-8, and backed their way into the playoffs.
But pitchers and catchers should be reporting this upcoming week. And
doesn't look like that's going to happen.
I would be shocked because from what I'm reading, the MLB is talking about upping the pre-arbitration players or the bonus pool for pre-arbitration players from $10 million to $15 million.
Mm-hmm.
The Players Association is looking for $100 million pool. That's a big difference. That is a big difference.
Yeah, I mean, that's just one of many things that is way off between the two. And, you hear about MLB still not wanting to pay guys in major league camp that are minor leaguers, which to me doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. I mean, it's not like, sure, they agreed on the DH, but you look at all the economic stuff. I mean, they are light years apart. And what does it tell you when their Saturday meeting didn't even last an hour?
Right. The minimum salary baseball is looking to have a minimum salary that's tiered, with the lowest being $615,000 a year up to $725,000 for players that have been 2 to 3 years. And MLBPA is looking for a minimum of $775,000 for all service time levels. So fairly big chunk there, but I think that one is doable.
It's closer than some of the other stuff.
All right. The competitive balance tax threshold, the baseball has it at 214. The Players Association is seeking 245. Okay, their ballpark on that one. The service time issue, like there's still some significant financial hurdles that they still have to resolve.
Service time issue is a big one.
Yeah. And, like I don't understand why the Cubs have become the poster child for that, because so many teams have done it, and it's part of the rules. The players agreed to it. I get why young players are mad about it and the agents are mad about it, but it's something they agreed to. They should just shut up and fight for it now. Now is the time to fight for it. And I agree that it is bogus. It's totally bogus, but it's part of the rules. And it's part of the tank rebuild process too.
Right. I mean, they didn't do anything illegal by it, and plenty of other teams did do it. I mean, I agree with you. It is kind of bogus. It is kind of shitty, but the Cubs were not the only team to do that. I mean, remember the Sox with Eloy Jimenez? I mean, they signed him to an extension before they even called him up for that reason.
Right. And, and they lucked out that he signed that extension because,
Not everyone would do that. No.
Scott Boras would not have signed that.
No. And that's another thing too, is sometimes people will look at the Cubs' previous core and they say, look what Rick Hahn did with his guys. Why couldn't the Cubs do that? There is no way in hell Scott Boras would allow his client to, there's no way you would have been able to do that with Chris Bryant. They did do it with Anthony Rizzo. Maybe you could have done it with Javier Baez, but no, with Chris Bryant, never happening. Never happening.
Right. There was no way that was happening. Scott Boras wasn't going to do that unless you met him or met like the money that they expected to make in free agency. So
which if you're a team, you're not going to do that.
Right. You're not going to do that because if you're going to pony up that kind of money, you may as well play that market and just outbid people then and make sure that, this is the guy that you want. And before you pony up that money, the reason you sign an extension is because usually you get more bang for your buck. You get a better value because you're signing them early. So the player gets some sort of safety net, financial safety net, and you get a cheaper salary. That's usually the agreement everybody comes to, not Scott Boras. And if you plan to do that, you don't, if you plan to do that, you don't sign Scott Boras as an agent.
No. Yeah. I mean, the whole idea of those types of extensions from a club side is club friendly deal. That's the term that we use, club friendly deal. When the White Sox sold off before their rebuild, you had club friendly deals for both Jose Quintana and Chris Sale. That was one of the reasons they were so valuable. In addition to them just being really good players, they're even better when you have a club friendly deal that ups their value. So the other team is willing to pay a higher price because they have multiple years of control at a club friendly price. Jose Quintana came to the Cubs with several years of control. He wasn't just a rental, and the salary was like what? Around 10, 11, 12 million a year. For a starting pitching of the caliber he was with the White Sox, that is a really good bang for your buck.
Yeah. And, when they sold everybody off, not only did you have young pitchers with years of control it was years of control at low cost. So you had to pony out more for that. And it really jump-started that rebuild.
Right.
So now, it was huge.
Right. And now the other thing that, is really interesting is you look at the basic rules of, service time before you become a free agent, the 6 years, the years of pre-arb, and then arbitration eligibility. And that gets more complicated too, because there's a thing called a Super 2, and a Super 2 is basically where I think every year it's changed a little bit, but it's slightly like it's usually around like between like 2.4, 2.5, 2.6. It's just estimation. It's basically if you're a player and you check off the list of all these qualifications. And basically what that is if you check all these qualifications and you're the minimum year of the Super 2, so under 3 years, but above 2. So you served at least 2, but not quite 3. And if you fulfilled all of these qualifications on the list, and there's several of them, then you're one of those Super 2s that even though you haven't done a full 3 years yet, you become arbitration eligible. So this stuff really does get pretty complicated. Just an example, Harold Ramirez, who's on the Cub 40-man roster right now, they traded for him. He's a Super 2. So that means he doesn't have quite 3 years of service time, but he now is arbitration eligible. So there are people that could explain Super 2 a hell lot better than me. I still don't fully understand it or why it's there, but the best way I could describe it in layman's terms is a set of qualifications would allow you to have arbitration eligibility, even if you haven't served 3 years of service time yet. So, I mean, just this stuff can get really complicated.
Well, what's funny is, people start figuring like, the agents and the owners and the number crunchers and the diehards will have it figured out early. But once like, everybody else starts figuring out all of the, the rules and intricacies of the collective bargaining agreement, it's time for the new collective bargaining agreement, and then those are going to get all reshuffled. And so it's going to take a while once they do agree on a new deal, what's all inside of there, and
that's true,
and how these things play out, because I'm sure all of those things are going to be redefined in some way of rookie pay scale and arbitration eligibility, etc.
Well, yeah, you figure because, maybe when you get into the new season, you're going to have guys that are, on the verge of arbitration eligibility. Are things going to change with that? We don't know. Are you still going to have a Super 2? Is a Super 2 going to be modified? I don't know how this is going to change. I mean, there's so many things you could go over. And, when you're pre-arb, you're basically just given your salary. They say, we've tendered you a contract. This is what you're going to make. And it's typically around league minimum, around there, maybe a little more depending on the player. But, if league minimum goes up or there's different stipulations, this is going to be something, to your point, that these front offices are going to really have to get used to. And think about this too. There's a lot of free agents still out there. They're going to be trying to sign guys. Yeah. And you have teams that are still considered contending or are considered rebuilding, and those roster constructs are going to vary. But, let's say you got a team full of young guys, is their service time going to be different? So are your initial projections going to be different with these guys? Maybe you think you have certain years of control with certain guys. Maybe it's a little bit altered. That could really kind of change your strategy depending on how much actually changes with this new collective bargaining agreement.
Well, and something I don't know if the new agreement will address this at all, but I just read something the other day that although the top salaries have gone up and the average salary per player has gone up, the median salary over the last several years has gone down or been stagnant.
Yeah, I read that too. Very interesting.
I mean, when you look at it, and I know part of that was COVID, that, the teams were hemorrhaging money. So
it's true.
You would rather pay a young guy money as opposed to a veteran who's going to, even if it was a low cost veteran, you just don't pay that guy. And but in all reality, it's from a players association perspective, is you look at this and you're like, okay, well, we want to make sure that we know the superstars are going to get paid. They just get paid. The top guys get paid. But how do we protect and get the young guys paid? And how do we protect and get paid the guys that just hang around for a long time that aren't superstars? And
yeah.
Because those guys, there's going to be people that play a long time when you look at it, they probably make a good chunk of change, but but when you figure like, okay, based on through their arbitration, they're not going to make a ton of money. I mean, per year, you're like, oh yeah, it's pretty ridiculous. It's way more than I'll ever make per year. But you figure that this is what they've been trained to do for their whole lives, and they're not going to be able to do this very long. And then maybe afterwards they get a couple of low cost deals for veteran minimums or, a little over. And sure, when it all comes down, they've made couple $1 million, but then you figure that they've made it in such a small amount of time that they're hitting the highest tax brackets as opposed to earning it over a longer period of time when you have more manageable tax brackets. So you're hitting higher tax brackets, you're paying, unusual costs of living because you probably have a home, and then you probably have like an apartment somewhere. If it's, your team, you're being traded often, you're getting an apartment, you're paying agent fees, etc. And then it just dries up. So, you're trying to protect those guys to get them as much money as possible, because they're going to have to live the rest of their lives off the money they make over these 10 years or whatever.
Yeah, no, that's all very true. And that's why this is, this is why it's not, when you're this far apart on so many of these issues, like, this is not going to just happen in one session. They're not just going to sit down one day and be like, oh, we've got it all figured out now. I mean, this could be a really long, grueling process.
Do you think that baseball will ever get non-guaranteed contracts like NFL?
I just don't see the MLBPA going for that.
As much as I'm pro player and pro player getting paid, the non-guaranteed contracts in the NFL make it so much easier for your team to be able to turn things around, because they're just like, you know what, this contract is not worthwhile. Shed it.
Well, and here's another problem too, is there's no salary cap in baseball. There's luxury tax, but there's no hard cap. In football, there is. So
there is and there isn't.
I mean, I know what you mean, but
like, if you're going to talk about a league that has a true salary cap, the closest you would get to it is NHL.
You're right.
Because
you're right.
It's hard to manipulate the salaries because they go by average salary. The NFL, you can finagle that so much.
You can, yes.
Converting salary to signing bonus to roster bonuses.
You can kick the can down the road at ease.
Yep. You can keep kicking it down the road, and then ultimately, you end up you're paying all that money, but the salary cap goes up significant amount most years. And you're like, okay, well, you know what, is paying this quarterback $40 million a year would suck right now, but $40 million down the road is probably not going to be, it's going to be like paying $20 million now. So let me kick that can down the road where it's a more reasonable contract. And the game in the NFL that you sort of rig is most of the teams that are the best teams, the Buccaneers and the Packers and the Rams, they go, oh, if you were to do average salary like they do in NHL towards the cap, they would be so far over the cap, it wouldn't be funny, but they just manipulate the cap so well. And eventually, and they're like, okay, we've got this window. And then once that window is done, they're like, okay, let's shed all these contracts and be bad for a couple of years. It's the new mode of the NFL, is super spend and then come back down to earth for a couple of years and then ramp back up again. Baseball doesn't have that sort of thing. There's the luxury tax, and teams are cheap and don't want to pay over that.
Well, that's the thing. You have way less teams in baseball too willing to go over the luxury tax. Because the Dodgers and the Yankees are like the only ones.
I think didn't the Padres hit it this year?
They might have. I mean, they took on a lot of salary because remember, they traded for Darvish. They traded for Snell, even though I don't think he was making an albatross amount of money. And they gave a huge extension to Fernando Tatis. But still, it's a very small selection of teams.
Yeah, it's that they're going to have to figure that out, because I mean, from a players union perspective, you probably don't want a salary cap, but you want a salary floor.
Well, yeah. And I mean, think about it. There's so much of a difference between the top spenders in MLB and the least. I mean, if you were to create a salary cap, I mean, you would be looking at, the difference between the Oakland A's versus the New York Yankees. I mean, just go back to Moneyball. You remember the difference then? Look at the difference now. It's still, I mean, the salaries have overall all gone up greatly, but the difference is still there, a huge gap between what the Yankees are spending and what the Oakland Athletics are spending. It would be, if you're going to implement a salary cap, I mean, that just to me would seem so hard to do.
So I'm looking at Spot Track that has the luxury tax threshold for last season, and the Dodgers and the Phillies were the only team that actually paid a luxury tax bill.
Okay.
The Red Sox were over, but not over enough to pay the luxury tax bill. And the Padres were just under by less than 2 million. They were close.
Oh, wow.
So the Astros, Yankees, Padres were all right up against it. Then the Angels and the Mets were not that far off, like single digit millions. And then, Cardinals and White Sox were like 30 million away. Cubs were $47 million away.
And that's after they shed all their payroll.
The Orioles are $150 million below the luxury. They have $150 million of luxury tax space.
They're also 150 million games under 500.
That's true. Let's see, for 2022. Let me update that. I'm sure nobody's going to be at that. Yeah, nobody's there right now. Oh, wait, no. Mets.
I was going to say the Mets signed a ton of people.
They just reversed the order when I put it in there. So the Mets, Dodgers, and Yankees are all going to be paying luxury tax. And the Padres are like $300,000 away.
I wouldn't be surprised if the Padres, once baseball finally comes back, I wouldn't be surprised if they try to dangle some prospects and attach some contracts to that. There's been rumors with Eric Hosmer about saying, hey, we'll trade you one of our top prospects, but you got to take Eric Hosmer's contract. Because it's a big contract.
Yeah, it's a big contract, and the Padres were very good for a while and then just sort of faded off. They were disappointing.
Yeah, they really faded. Darvish really faded.
Yeah.
Well, remember too, did you hear about how they changed the balls mid-season? They didn't tell anybody.
No, I didn't hear that.
Well, think about it too. They changed the balls and they took away the sticky stuff.
Well, I knew they took away the sticky stuff.
Yeah, everybody knew that. But there was the report that came out not too long ago that baseball, without telling people, they changed the balls.
That's, it's kind of lame, but that seems like something MLB would do.
Well, remember 2017 with the juice balls?
Mm-hmm.
MLB's never going to flat out come out and say what they did, but everybody knew there was something going on.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, they said it felt different. It looked different. It wasn't the same. And balls were suddenly just flying out of the park with ease. You had more, I think it was 2019, soon after the juice balls thing kind of came about, because that was like 2017. But in 2019, you had more players hit 20 plus home runs in MLB history. Jason Hayward hit more than 20 home runs that year. Not to keep picking on Hayward, but I mean, even when Hayward was really good, he wasn't that much of a power hitter. When he was good with Atlanta and St. Louis, he was usually about, 14 to 18 home runs a year.
I wish we had that Jason Hayward.
Dude, if we had the Cardinals version of Jason Hayward that one year, oh man. Think about how good 2016 would have been if we had that. Think about this. The Cubs in 2016, the eventual world champs, won 103 games. This was without Kyle Schwarber that whole year, and with Jason Hayward having his worst year before last year. Last year was awful, but
it was his worst year of his career up to that point.
Right, exactly. Far and away. Imagine if you had the Cardinals version of Hayward and Kyle Schwarber not getting hurt with everything else that happened with all those players that year.
It'd have been a hell of a team.
Probably would be looking at 110 wins. That's why you see the Cubs technically underperformed that year. I mean, I miss that team.
There's another baseball thing I wanted to mention. I just saw this today. Did you see that Baseball Prospectus ranks the Cubs farm system as the 7th best?
I did.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah, there was an article not too long ago. I think it was Baseball America. I think it was Baseball America where they ranked all of the prospects that were on the cusp of being in the next round of the top 100. So not quite there yet, but on the path. And the Cubs were the second most behind the Tampa Bay Rays. So the Tampa Bay Rays have the most top 100 prospects. And then they have the highest wave of next top 100 prospects. Their farm system is ridiculous. But of that team, of that pool, the Cubs have a ton of guys that are on the cusp of being in that potentially being in that next wave of top 100 prospects. We're talking about guys like Jordan Wicks, DJ Hers, Caleb Killian. I think Owen Casey was in that group too. So, no matter what happens with MLB, the minor leagues are still going to play. And that means the Cubs prospects are going to play no matter what. So regardless of what happens this year, 2022 is a huge year for the Cubs organization because they have a chance to bring all these prospects that they have another step further. This means, continuing to season your number one prospect in Brendan Davis, continuing to watch pitchers like Caleb Killian and Jordan Wicks, DJ Hers, those guys grow. Christian Hernandez getting into A-ball, looking at Owen Casey and Reginald Preciado continue to grow, seeing what you have in Ed Howard in another year. I mean, this is really important for this organization.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely huge. And, if these players reach anywhere near their potential, they have the core of a World Series team in this farm system. If they're able to develop them like we're hoping / expecting them to. And that's going to be the key, is the Cubs have been able to develop batters to a certain point, but they have not been able to develop pitching in a long time.
No.
That's going to be a key, is they're going to have to be able to develop some pitching.
Caleb Killen and Jordan Wicks are incredibly crucial for this.
Yes.
And hopefully Braylon Marquez too. He didn't pitch last year.
That would be the hope. Yeah, that would be the hope.
What's a real bummer is that we won't get Miguel Amaya this year.
Right.
That kind of stinks, but boy, and there's other prospects too. I don't know if you know about him, but the guy they got in the Rizzo trade, Kevin Alcantara, keep your eye out on him. He's pretty interesting.
I'm going to keep my eye on the Crow. Pete Crow Armstrong.
Oh, PCA. Forgot to mention him.
I think he's ranked just outside the top 100.
He was another one,
or 105th, something like that. So
The
Excited to
Mets
see
were
him.
very high on him. From what I understand, it was really difficult to pull the string on that trade for the Mets to get Baez.
Well, you got to make them pay. Everybody has to pay.
Pay the piper. I mean, it's because P. Crow Armstrong, from what you read, isn't a power guy, but he's a hitter. Makes contact, very athletic, and can really stretch it in the outfield. I mean, think of it. If things go well, you could be looking at two of your essential outfielders in the farm right now, and Brennan Davis and P. Crow Armstrong.
Right.
And now that you have this DH, maybe there's more room for these prospects to flourish on the big league team.
That's, that would be neat, is, more opportunity for these kids to play.
Now, there's another perspective of this too. When you look at the Cubs farm system, it's pretty obvious that the Cubs are going to try to get back in contention as soon as possible. So I imagine when the lockout ends, whether it's Correa or not, they're going to be in on other free agents. And I'm not saying it's going to be like a Nick Castellanos or a Correa, but there are still guys available. They will sign more guys. And as you build a core and you're looking at a lot of these prospects to be part of that core, having a deep farm system too, it probably means you're going to see some of these guys traded at some point as well. And it's really hard to identify who you would trade and who you wouldn't right now. But if I were to look at this farm system, I would say you got to really focus on developing the pitchers you have. So, you're going to want DJ Hers, and you're going to want Jordan Wicks. You're going to want Caleb Killen. You want them to be part of your team going forward. But, maybe an Ed Howard becomes part of a trade deal, if he ups his value. Maybe you see trade value in guys like a Reginald Preciado. And I'm just throwing this out here. There's other guys too. There's Cole Franklin. There's what's his name? Another outfielder, Velasquez, who was one of the top players in the AFL this past year. Him and Killen were the key to the Mesa Solar Sox victory. He's got a really pretty swings. This is stuff you got to think about. That some of these guys in your farm system are going to be part of trades. That's just part of the deal. The problem with the Epstein rebuild was it was very, it was a good farm system in overall ranking, but even when you called the guys up and you saw the good farm system, a lot of it was because it was top heavy. So you had your Gleyber Torres, you had your Eloy Jimenez, you had your Billy McKinney. So once you traded those guys away, the cupboard was kind of bare. But when you have a deep farm system at all levels, that means you have depth. So that means you can keep growing guys. And I think that was one of the big problems with the Epstein rebuild is once they traded away the top, there wasn't any more depth in the farm system to really have much value.
The depth is key because you want there to be a backlog of players, because then you can move somebody and then maintain, your standings both in the minor league and your major league roster. You want these guys to come up with waves too, so it makes it easier to re-sign people. If you have players come up, every year, the Cubs problem was you had Chris Bryant and Javi Baez and Anthony Rizzo all and other guys just due for contracts all at the same time, and it was like one big push. And that was it. There was nothing else. It was not a sustained push. You're looking at now, you've got guys expected to come up this year, next year, the year after that. You've got waves. I mean, your top 5 guys are coming up, or the ETA is 2022, 2023, 2024, 2025. So you've got waves of people coming in. So as you lose talent, you have more talent. and you just keep replenishing your farm system. It's how the Dodgers keep doing it.
Yeah, and I mean,
Contention.
We could see a point where there is a major league season and Brennan Davis comes up to the big leagues, then it's very possible that Christian Hernandez could be your number one prospect, and he's a ways away. So you have other guys in that farm system that aren't nearly as further away as Christian Hernandez. Jordan Wicks, I could see him being part of the team in 2023, next year. They drafted him out of college so they can get him to the big leagues sooner than later. Depending on Pete Crow Armstrong, maybe he's up sooner than later. So like you said, waves, that's very important to have.
Is if you end up bringing, assuming there's a season this year, if you end up bringing Brennan Davis and Braylon Marquez to the major league roster, and assuming you just sort of shift the remaining prospects up as like a backfill, so you move everybody up those two spots because those are your 1 and 2 based on MLB's top prospects. Christian Hernandez, ETA is coming up in 2025. Miguel Amaya, we have no idea what's going to happen there. Then Pete Crow Armstrong, 2024. Jordan Wicks, 2023. Ed Howard, 2024. Reginald Preciado, 2024. So these guys are in the coming years. So, as much as I would like for the Cubs to sign Nick Castellanos, by the time these young guys are up in the major league level, Nick Castellanos is going to be 32, 33 years old. Does it make sense to sign him?
I think you can if there's a DH.
As much as he's
though he is asking for quite the sizable deal.
Carlos Correa is 27 years old. So you sign him, he boosts your team right now. And he's still in his prime when these other guys start coming up. You just got to pay for him, though. Pay a lot.
Right. You know what's interesting? You just mentioned the MLB rankings for the prospects. Fangraphs does it a little differently. Here's what Fangraphs has for their top 10. Brennan Davis is obviously number one. I mean, I think that's across every baseball outlet. Brennan Davis is the number one prospect in the Cubs system. I mean, he's like in the top 30 of the top 100.
Yeah, so, I think he's 2022 or something. I think he's top 25. Yeah,
at least. But Fangraphs, they have number 2 is Kevin Alcantara. Number 3 is Owen Casey. Number 4, here's another very important prospect who's a ways away, but very, very intriguing, is James Triantos. He's a shortstop.
Didn't he make the top 100 or just outside?
I think he just missed.
Like 101 or 102 or something.
I mean, the different outlets have different rankings, and I've kind of lost track who ranks what, because you got Baseball Prospectus, Baseball America, MLB.com, Fangraphs. There's so many different baseball outlets that ranks these prospects. So I think James Triantos, with the way he's projecting, he'll be on top 100 list for sure. I've watched some of his highlight reels. He can hit the piss out of the ball, man. Like, he's 18 years old, but boy, he really smacks the ball. So keep your eye out on him. Then you have Reginald Preciado, Christian Hernandez, Caleb Killian, Ed Howard, Jordan Wicks, Alexander Vizcaíno. Those are the top 10 as ranked by Fangraphs, followed closely by DJ Hers, Miguel Amaya, PCA, Alexander Canario, Nelson Velasquez.
You know what's crazy, though, is a huge chunk of those guys you named, their age has the word teen in there.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's the thing about this Cub farm system is so many of these guys are very raw. So they're either signed as teenagers out of, as international free agents, or they were drafted out of high school. So you remember the Theo Epstein rebuild. They got Anthony Rizzo when he was already a pretty established prospect. He was originally with the Red Sox and then with the Padres, so he had been around a few years. They drafted Chris Bryant out of college. They drafted Kyle Schwarber out of college. So these guys had a bit of a pedigree to them. And Javier Baez, he obviously didn't go to college, but he was signed by Jim Hendry, drafted by Jim Hendry in 2011. So he'd, been in the system as they were rebuilding, at least for some time. These guys, a lot of these guys, very raw, very young, they don't have quite the pedigree built yet, but they're getting that chance to do that now. So a full year of development, if these guys keep increasing the way they do, they're going to have that pedigree built. And I guarantee you, if they are on the right track, you're going to see multiple of these guys make the top 100 with the way they're tracking, because guys are going to graduate to the big leagues. They'll no longer be prospects. Then these next waves will come up. So, don't just look at the top 100 and get down on the Cubs farm system because of that. This could look very different by September. Really could.
It's crazy to think. We're like, oh man, these guys are so young. They've got a few years before they get ready. Ken Griffey Jr. made his MLB debut when he was 19.
Yeah, didn't him and Bryce Harper both do that?
I remember Ken Griffey Jr.'s. I remember what a deal it was. It was. It was and that guy did not disappoint.
No, let's just say he was kind of good.
I
Freak
think
of nature.
I think, without watching him, if you just stat watch, you don't get the full perspective. But if you actually watch that guy play, it was unreal. Same with Frank Thomas. Like, there was a time period where Frank Thomas was the most feared hitter in baseball.
Mm-hmm.
And,
oh yeah.
And you sort of look at stats and you're like, oh, he was a pretty good hitter. And you're like, no. Like, he was a pretty good hitter for his entire career, but there was a 4 or 5 year period where he terrified pitchers.
Purely Baseball on Twitter did this poll the other day. Who would you rather have, David Ortiz or Frank Thomas? And I get David Ortiz has accomplished a lot in his career and he deserves the praise, but dude, like, it's Frank Thomas is such the obvious answer.
Yeah. I mean, David Ortiz had without looking at the numbers, I'm guessing a better career, like stats collecting over a period of time. But good God, Frank Thomas was good.
Okay, here's Frank Thomas's final career slash line. 301, 419, 555. His WRC plus was 154. Okay. His F4 was 72.1. All right. Keep that in mind. Now let's look at David Ortiz. Let's see, David Ortiz. Okay. David Ortiz, his career, 286, 380, 552, 140 WRC plus, 51 F4. I mean, Frank Thomas was a higher F4 by 20. And he had a career OBP of over 400, a career average of over 300. Like, he's flat out better than David Ortiz.
Yeah, I mean, you look at a couple of years here, and you're just like, good grief, did Frank Thomas just absolutely crush it? I mean, a lot of years. Look, Jesus. I mean, 1994, his on-base percentage was 487.
And it's a shame that strike happened because, he could have had a chance to have one of his best seasons ever.
Yeah, 113 games, and he had 38 home runs, 353 batting average, 487 on base, 729 slugging, and under 12% K rate.
That's unreal.
And a 21.1% walk rate. And you're like, oh, well, you couldn't possibly follow that up the next year. Oh, here we go. 20 lower walk or same walk, 21%, lower strikeouts, 40 home runs, 308 batting average, 454 on base, 606 slugging.
If you're in a WRC plus, 1994, his WRC plus was 205. Over 200. That's unbelievable. And I don't care if it was a shortened season. To have a WRC plus over 200 in 113 games, that's insane. That's mind-boggling.
I mean, let's see. I think the record for WRC plus is 244 all time.
Would that have been what? Like
Bonds.
Barry Bonds? Yeah.
Yes.
Barry Bonds was, oh my God.
Only two players have ever had more than that 205. Sorry. Only one player has had more than that 205 WRC plus. That's Barry Bonds. Mark McGwire had it in 98. But other than that, nobody has ever gotten higher than that. And Bonds has 4 times. He had 212, 233, 234, 244.
Bonds, man. Dude, 2004, his on-base percentage was 609. He got on base 60% of the time. That should not be possible. He's the only ball player I know that was intentionally walked with the bases loaded.
I mean, to be fair, he also had that body armor that made it so hard for people to pitch to him because you couldn't pitch inside because you were going to hit him. And
you want to know something about that though? Not necessarily about where he hit, but I saw the highlight of when he had a 70th home run or 70th or 71. I can't remember which one it was. He was facing Eric Gagne. And if you remember Eric Gagne, he could touch triple digits. Like he could throw hard in his heyday.
Yep.
He got inside an Eric Gagne 99 mile an hour heater and he pulled it foul by like 40 feet. Pulled it foul. Do you think there was a quicker swing in baseball in the history of baseball than Barry Bonds? I don't think so.
If I had to go with anybody, it would be Gary Sheffield.
Okay.
That would be the only one I could think of.
Now, there's no question. I don't think that Barry Bonds had the best hand-eye coordination.
I'd go Tony Gwynn, but Barry Bonds right there. Yeah.
I mean, Tony Gwynn was a pure hitter. He made hitting an art form. He had that smooth swing. He knew exactly how to swing, where to swing it. He just so flawlessly just knew how to just put a ball in play. With Barry Bonds, he didn't chase shit. Like if it was just the slightest bit outside, he knew how to take. It was pretty amazing. Steroids or not.
Oh, that guy, clearly he was on steroids, but, if he would have done the right thing for baseball and never done steroids, he still would have been a Hall of Famer.
Yeah, absolutely. There's one more debate that I wanted to bring up with you that I had with people, and I'm really getting sick of this. I'm so tired of people shitting on people like the Babe or any old time player They wouldn't be able to hit in today's game. They face players that pitch 60 miles an hour. Okay. Do you really think Babe Ruth, if he played today, would condition himself, strengthen himself like he did in the 1920s? Do you really think he would be in the same form as he would be in the 1920s if he played today?
Here's the thing. If you look at it from the perspective of, I just reached in through a time machine and plucked Babe Ruth from a random year and put him today, yeah, he would probably suck. Like, he would suck, but he would just be thrown for a loop, and
Right.
You would see evening out.
I agree.
You can't do that. Because it's like taking Albert Einstein and putting him in today's, like, a science lab today. He would be lost because he wouldn't understand the computer technology, but he'd still be the smartest guy in the room.
Right.
Just
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah, you can't do that. Is you have to. The only thing we can do is we can compare them to the best players of that era, and Babe Ruth was so there was no time period where there was a greater gap between the top player and the next best player than there was with Babe Ruth.
No. I mean, the guy would hit 500 plus home runs in ballparks that were huge. I mean, the old ballpark in Pittsburgh, it was a place where you play small ball for a reason. And he hit 3 home runs in one game there at the end of his career.
So
I hate when people just discredit someone because they played in a different era. Yeah, like you said, if you plucked Babe Ruth in a time machine and put him here, it would be very different. You're absolutely right. You could do the same thing where if you took a practice squad running back and you put him in the 1930s, he would dominate everybody. There's no question about that. But that's all just a fantasy scenario. It's not that's not realistic. If Babe Ruth was born in 1998 compared to 1902 or 1903, whenever he was actually born, or maybe it was the late 1800s, I don't remember exactly, but whenever Babe Ruth was born, he lived a completely different lifestyle, a completely different world. If he were born in 1998, he'd be living our lifestyle if we were playing baseball. And the other thing too is, Babe Ruth was just, he was fat, he ate all the hot dog, blah, 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 blah. Babe Ruth, when he was a young athlete, as an amateur and in his first days as a pro with the Red Sox, he was a tremendous athlete. He was fit. You look at him, he was fit, he was athletic. He became big when he became a superstar. But you know what? He still did it anyway. And if it was so easy to do that back then, how come nobody else did it? How come nobody else hit 60 home runs in one season in 1927? How come nobody can transition from being an elite pitcher to an elite just hitter? That he was so good that, like, you know what? You're not going to pitch anymore. You're just going to hit. If it was that easy in the 1920s, then how come everybody didn't do it?
Yeah. I mean, Hack Wilson was like the Cub from that era. And he was third in baseball that year in home runs in 1927. And Babe Ruth doubled him.
And Hack Wilson in 1930 still holds the all-time RBI record, 191. Hack Wilson became the National League Babe Ruth.
Hack
think about it
when he very good, but he was not a Babe Ruth. There's a reason they don't talk about him like they talk about Babe Ruth.
It's too bad, because I think Hack Wilson, when you look at the top of his prime, deserves a lot more praise for what he did, because he was doing things that only Babe Ruth was capable of.
I mean, 1930, 356, 454, 723 with 56 home runs and 191 RBIs.
And think about this too. Wrigley Field at that time didn't have the configuration it has today. It didn't have the brick wall with the ivy and the bleachers. It was basically, you had bleachers in center field with the scoreboard, the old stick elf men on top of that old scoreboard. And then you had the wall that separated the park from the streets. So that was a further ball to hit if you were hitting in the wells. So in an era too where only certain guys were hitting a ton of home runs, that wasn't as easy to do. Meanwhile, Babe Ruth in the 1932 World Series hits the famous called shot, and that was estimated as like nearly around 500 feet. But again, it was Babe Ruth.
But I'm going to switch gears here a little bit. And I want to talk a little football because we are recording this hours before the Super Bowl. If you're a regular listener to this show, you'll recall that just before Thanksgiving, I wrote a letter to the president of the Bears and the son of the owner, George McCaskey. I wrote him a letter that I put a lot of thought into. I'm going to read the letter again. Dear George, I write this letter as a diehard Chicago Bears fan for nearly 40 years and weekly Bears podcaster for about the last 7+ years. My finger's firmly on the pulse of the fans, and this letter serves as a list of grievances with the organization. First, I hope you have taken the opportunity to rewatch the end-of-year press conference you jointly held with Ted Phillips last year. The vast majority of Bears fans and beat writers and Chicago media in general went into that meeting fully expecting the announcement of the firing of Matt Nagy as head coach and Ryan Pace as general manager. However, what happened was you doubling down in your support of that pair. While I fully understand that you and Ted are tasked with running the franchise, the air of tone deafness in your press conference was staggering. Hopefully this offseason you make the correct choice in regard to the coaching and front office structure. I acknowledge that Ryan Pace has had success with mid to late round draft picks, Adrian Amos, Eddie Jackson, David Montgomery, Nick Kwiatkowski, etc. His overall draft success, especially with early round picks, has been bad. Kevin White, Leonard Floyd, Mitchell Trubisky, Adam Shaheen. In addition, Pace's constant trading up has left the well of draft picks dry. Ryan has also been so silent on the state of the Bears that the most vocal voices have been frustrated former players and disgruntled current players. I'm not sure here's where I feel like I was early to the game. I'm not sure you follow former players on Twitter, but I think you may want to sit down before reading comments from the likes of Lance Briggs and Olin Kreutz. Also, Ryan has stuck so hard behind Matt Nagy without addressing the very clear failures of this coaching staff. But the most damning argument is the salary cap management. The salary cap and dead money situation with the Chicago Bears is borderline nightmare. This front office keeps kicking the financial burden down the road, and I'm very concerned we're going to waste the rookie deal years of Justin Fields paying for Ryan Pace's mistakes. Matt Nagy, on the other hand, has been a disaster. This man was brought in labeled as an offensive genius and a quarterback whisperer. In his time, he has run Mitchell Trubisky into the ground, grounded a Super Bowl MVP in Nick Foles, railroaded Andy Dalton, and is attempting to get Justin Fields killed. His play calling is atrocious and leads to so much pre-snap confusion that we have more motion penalties, delay of game penalties, and blown up plays than I've ever seen in my life. When he was bullied into giving up play calling and the team saw some modicum of success under Bill Lazor, he was quick to rush to the podium to tell everyone how it was his offense. We have not successfully developed one offensive player under Matt Nagy. In fact, our best offensive lineman is a 39-year-old that was a free agent on a fishing trip all through training camp. I could list for you the offensive numbers post 2018 for you and how the Bears are consistently at the bottom of the league. Despite our wide receiver cores being one of the fastest in the NFL, the routes they are given to run are so predictable that they can't get open. We are constantly being dragged by national media, i.e. Ryan Clark and Dan Orlovsky, especially dragging the coaching of Matt Nagy. Matt Nagy's face has literally become a meme for incompetence, which is embarrassing as a fan. On top of the on-field play, we have the organization now embroiled in a very public battle with the city of Chicago and a scandal where the Bears organization helped cover up the assault of a pregnant woman by a current Bears player. Your grandfather was the architect of the Chicago Bears as a historic team in the NFL. Can you look at the legacy of this franchise under your watch and feel you have continued that success? The Chicago Bears have only made the playoffs 6 times since Mike Ditka was fired in 1992, almost 30 years ago. And the team is 3-6 in those playoff appearances. In that same time period, the Bears have only won 10 or more games in season 6 times. Statistically, the Bears have only been in the top half of NFL offenses 6 times since 1992. In that time, they had 16 different quarterbacks that led the team in passing for the year. That is not how you define success in any way, shape, or form. To give context to those numbers, in the same time period, the Green Bay Packers have had 3 quarterbacks. One was due to an injury, have won 2 Super Bowls and won the division 15 times. The New England Patriots have had 5 quarterbacks, 1 due to injury, won 6 Super Bowls, and won the division 19 times. What this team needs is to move Ted Phillips away from any decisions related to the football operations. It is clear that ownership and Ted do not have the X's and O's acumen needed to guide a winning organization. So what is needed is a president of football operations that oversees the long-term on-field goals of the franchise, someone like a Nazi Newsom, and acts as a check on the GM. Do not rely on rival organizations to help you. Cough, Bidwell family, cough. This is vital for the long-term success of our franchise and to stop being the mediocrity of the Midway. One final and somewhat self-serving note I want to make. What the Chicago Bears deem as non-traditional media, which is bloggers and podcasters, are actually important. We are the ones that are the diehard fans. We are the ones that talk to other fans on a regular basis. Hub Arkish doesn't talk to fans. Brad Biggs doesn't talk to fans. ESPN doesn't talk to fans. But during Ryan Pace's tenure as general manager, the Chicago Bears organization has pushed away non-traditional media. The NFL recognizes us as media and allows us to apply to cover the draft and Super Bowl and other functions. However, the Chicago Bears organization no longer allows us to attend training camp or have access to players and coaches. Honestly, it makes me feel the team I love so much views me as an antagonist rather than an asset. My ultimate goal is to have the Chicago Bears franchise become the benchmark for NFL organizations and a perennial Super Bowl contender. I'm sick of having to settle for just being better than the Lions. I'm frustrated seeing how many Green Bay Packer jerseys around the city. I want the Bears games to be something the whole community gathers for and not a punishment the diehards inflict on themselves. I would be happy to further discuss any comments I have with you and be a conduit between the average fan and not the Skybox fans and yourself. I would even invite you to be on the podcast to have real talk to better learn your perspective. Whatever it takes to make the Bears great again. Sean Hodman, co-host of Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago. So I mailed that letter around Thanksgiving. And to my surprise, I opened the mail yesterday and I have a letter from Hallis Hall. Dear Mr. Hopman, thank you for your recent letter and for being a diehard Bears fan for nearly 40 years. We are excited about Ryan Poles as general manager and Matt Eberflus as head coach. Hope that you are too. Bear down, George H. McCaskey. That I wrote this heartfelt letter and he basically put drink more Ovaltine.
He gave you a Valentine like you give out in grade school.
And he literally hand wrote this in his chicken scratch handwriting. I texted you a picture and I texted a couple other friends.
I saw it.
And everybody responded, what 6-year-old wrote that? Oh, yes, it is the 65-year-old owner of the Chicago Bears. And while I appreciate he took the time to write to me, he didn't address he literally, hold on. The first sentence I wrote was, I write this letter as a diehard Chicago Bears fan of nearly 40 years. That is the only part of the whole thing he addressed.
Are you sure that he didn't just read the first sentence or two and then the final sentence and just be like, all right, I'm going to respond to this?
He may have just been like, I write this letter as a diehard Chicago Bears fan for nearly 40 years. That's great. I'm going to respond to this. All these other words, they just look long and tedious. I'm sure they're great in praise too, because who wouldn't love the Bears?
Oh yeah, they're probably just singing our praises and are so proud of us. And oh man, I'm gonna get out my purple crayon and respond.
I'm sure this chap really enjoyed seeing me at the airport.
Now, ooh, I noticed that it was handwritten in pen. What kind of pen did he use?
I bet it wasn't a fancy pen.
It was one that's been on the floor for like a year. It's just one of those pens that just falls and just kind of rolls into like the crease of like the end of a carpet against the wall.
It literally still has the chain from when he accidentally took it from the bank. Whoops.
I hope nobody finds out that I stole this pen from the bank.
It still has the hotel on it from where he stayed previously.
It's got like embassy suites.
It's like some like the Best Western.
I stayed at the Best Western Soldier Field in Minnesota because it had the word Soldier Field in it.
I took this pen from my favorite vacation when I went to Omaha and stayed at the Best Western there in Omaha.
He also has a cup on his desk from like the disposable coffee cups they give you in the hotels.
It still has the plastic wrap around it.
I was saving this for a rainy day.
I also took a towel too. I leave it in my car just in case it rains and I get wet.
It's just sitting in the back seat.
He's got his gym clothes in the bags that you have at the hotels where you can put your dry cleaning in there and leave it.
Yep.
He takes that bag and that's what he uses as a gym bag.
Like those big canvas ones?
No, not even like those cheap plastic. It's like the plastic version of those that they have.
Oh God, yes.
That they're folded and hung over in next to the ironing board in the closet of a hotel. He's like, I take those and I use them as my gym bags.
Just picturing Ding Dong George carrying that to the gym. You got all these big macho men, like big, fitness guys working out, and there goes Ding Dong George with his bag. Afternoon, fellas. Great day to work out.
He keeps his leg warmers in there.
Oh God.
He's dressed like Richard Simmons, and he's got 3-pound dumbbells and he's working out in the Bears weight room.
Shake, shake, shake. Shake, shake, shake.
Wait. Oh,
shake your booty.
Is after he sent this letter, he actually listened to the show and heard us calling him Ding Dong George. He drives to my house and is like, I want my letter back. I don't think you're very nice.
Pulls up to your house, knocks on the door. Just imagine just opening the door and there's George McCaskey at your doorstep. It'd be even funnier if like George like just was in the workout room like during like team workouts. So you got like Khalil Mack and Roquan Smith just like benching whatever they bench, which I'm sure is probably a lot. And there's George with like 2 5-pound dumbbells. Gonna pump some iron today, boys.
He's got like a orange headband on and his leg warmers, his Bears leg warmers, and he's got like a one-piece spandex thing with gym teacher shorts on over the top of it.
Gym teacher shorts.
And he's in the corner, jazzercising.
That's dedication, man. Give him that dedication.
Oh my God. I somehow want to find Olin Kreutz and just be like, this is the letter that I sent to him and this is what he responded with. And then just be like, come on the show and discuss, please.
He probably would. He'd probably crack up.
Oh my God. He probably would. He would just be like, that guy, the ticket guy. The ticket guy is the one that hires our general managers and our head coaches.
Yeah, it's the ticket guy. He just sits in the ticket office and takes care of all that stuff.
But Ryan Poles made his first roster move as general manager of the Chicago Bears. He signed Willie Wright to the offensive tackle to a futures deal. Woof, Super Bowl, here we come.
And his name is Wright, so clearly a good move.
But you know, I keep seeing like, you know, those clickbait articles, and it was like one off-season move every team needs to make.
Yeah.
I click on all of those, and I don't know why, because I always end it going, that was stupid. Literally every time. And now I've seen so many where they're like, the one roster decision Bears have to make, or the one roster expectation the Bears are going to make. They're going to let Allen Robinson walk in free agency. No shit. Like that. Like, you know who sees that coming? Ray Charles. Stevie Wonder sees that coming. Like that is the biggest no-brainer. The guy was terrible this year, and you're not going to franchise tag him because I think it's going to be $21 and something million. And he's definitely not signing here as a free agent. So why in the world would that even be a decision? That is like the biggest no-brainer of all.
Yeah, you got to get something to write about, right? There's and you got all the the fake sources and he said she said stuff. It's
there's been so many I have a source people on Bears Twitter lately that it's frustrating.
I know who guy knows a guy who 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 knows this guy's cousin.
And honestly, don't expect the Bears to make a big splash in free agency this year, because, I think they're going to make some moves, and they're probably going to have somewhere around $40 million to spend. But in that $40 million, they've got a lot of holes to fill.
Yeah, they do.
They're gonna, a lot of decisions, because there's very few good centers that are on the market, and there's not a ton in the draft. So what do you do at center? You're probably going to end up paying James Daniels because, he's probably, for when you look at potential and age and such, like, he's going to be the best. He's 24. So your entire contract is going to be him in his prime. So wouldn't you rather pay him, significant money than somebody that's 30?
Yeah.
So
you're not going to put all your eggs in one basket when you have that many holes.
Yeah. You're going to end up, probably signing of the wide receivers. You're probably going to wind up with a Juju Smith-Schuster type, or a Sammy Watkins type, where they're okay. When you grade the Pro Football Focus grades, you're probably going to sign one or two guys that are around the same value Pro Football Focus grade as Darnell Mooney, which you're like, okay, that's pretty good, but you're not going to get one of those elite guys. You're not going to get a Devontae Adams, because it just doesn't make any sense. Like, if you were a wide receiver away, you're like, you know what? Put all the eggs in that basket. That'd be a really good basket to put all the eggs in. But you've got so many holes, you can't. And you don't have a lot of draft capital to fill those holes. You don't have a first round pick. You need to re-sign Bilal Nichols. You need to add more depth at defensive tackle. Who's going to be your other starting inside linebacker? you're probably going back to a 4-3. So you need more linebackers. Who's going to be your 2, 3, and 4 cornerback? Who's going to be your 2, 3, and 4 wide receiver? You've got a lot of holes to fill with that $40 million. So don't expect, all these people are like, oh, Bears are going to go after this guy and this guy. But like, that first wave of free agency where there's the tamper period, like I would be shocked to see the Bears sign anybody in there. They're probably going to put all that money towards either re-signing their own guys or signing guys in that second wave when you have the more modest free agents.
And I don't want to hear any fake rumors about Davante Adams either.
There's, I see 0.0001% chance of Davante Adams signing here.
Yeah.
I can't say a 0.0% because anything's possible, but it is really low down the list.
Mr. Blutarski, 0.0.
But the biggest Bears news is the slap in the face that the NFL Hall of Fame put by not putting in Devin Hester.
Oh, I was mad. I went full meatball that night. I went full meatball.
How in the world? Like, all right, there are kickers in the NFL Hall of Fame. So, and I get it. You know what? If you are the best at what you do, you should be in the Hall of Fame. And there is not a kick and punt returner better in the history of the game. And honestly, the way the rules are set up, it's going, unless at some point they change rules, Devin Hester is going to go down as the greatest punt and kick returner in NFL history, period, forever. And
there's no real conversation about it. You never hear anybody say, oh, well, Hester was good, but what about this guy? Or what about this guy? You never hear that. It's just, Devin Hester.
Yeah. I mean, before him, your next best was probably Deion Sanders. And Deion Sanders is going, well, why this guy is the greatest? Why is he not in the Hall of Fame?
Right.
It's a travesty. And in the people that they did put in, the only person that you can sell me on that deserved to be in there more than Devin Hester was maybe Tony Baselli. Everybody else, you go, nope, you cannot sell me on that they deserve to be in the Hall of Fame more than Devin Hester.
I mean, teams change their strategies on special teams because of Devin Hester. How often did you get the whole stadium on the edge of its seat when the ball was kicked to him? I mean, that energy, you had to be there to like experience it. When that ball headed in the direction of Devin Hester, whether it was at home or on the road, there was that tension, that energy, that just anticipation of when the ball was being kicked towards him. You never had that with any other return man. Never.
Just watch the opening kickoff of the Bears-Colts Super Bowl. Just watch. As soon as that ball was kicked and as soon as he caught it, watch all the camera flashes. Because everybody went, oh my God, they're kicking to Devin Hester. I think the Colts players on the sidelines went, oh my God, we're kicking to Devin Hester. And Devin Hester took the opening kickoff of the Super Bowl back for a touchdown. When everybody on the planet Earth went, like, do not kick it to him. And then once he catches it, go, uh-oh. And he just did it. Like, that moment was just absolutely, I don't even think that was his best kick return, but that was like the most magical one because you're just, you watch the whole world with their eyes on this guy. And
That was the biggest sports stage in the world, and he did that on the opening kick, and he was a rookie.
And for voters to watch that and go, nah, that's wrong. That's wrong. They got that one wrong.
It's malarkey, absolute pure malarkey.
Like
he made it so effortless.
Like, I don't care. Like, you don't even look at his numbers as a cornerback or as a wide receiver. I don't care.
He's going in as a special teamer.
Yeah. Don't even look at him because is he a Hall of Famer as a cornerback? Clearly not. Is he a Hall of Famer as a wide receiver?
No.
Nope. But is he a Hall of Famer as a special teams player? Absolutely.
Right, he is.
No player in the history of the NFL has changed special teams the way Devin Hester did.
First career game of his NFL career. It was the shutout win against the Packers, week 1, 2006. He brought one back. He established himself right away. He never looked back.
I still remember one game against the Rams, and he was still playing cornerback, and I want to say it was Torrey Holt. And Torrey Holt put a double move on him down at the goal line, and Devin Hester bid on it. And Torrey Holt scores a touchdown, and he's on the sidelines after the commercial break, putting a number one finger and hamming it up for the camera while the kickoff is going on. And you just see Devin Hester going by, return the kick. This ensuing kickoff, returned it for a touchdown just to negate that one.
Mm-hmm.
And you see him turn around and go, and the look of just dejection on his face, because he's like, there goes that touchdown I just scored.
Yep. Do you remember the game? I think it was 2007 when they were playing the Broncos and they were down like multiple scores, and he ended up returning 2 kick returns, and they eventually won that game. I think they won it in overtime, I believe. And that was against Jay Cutler too.
For the Cardinals, a Monday Night Football game.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Or do you remember when he took the missed field goal back for a touchdown?
Giants.
Yep. Mm-hmm. I think that was on Sunday Night Football too. Man, could you imagine if the Bears won that Super Bowl? How much more we'd be talking about that opening kickoff. We talk about Dexter Fowler's leadoff home run in Game 7 in 2016. That would have been the equivalent to that, maybe even greater, had the Bears won that game.
So I'm looking up that game that I was talking about was December 11th, 2006 against the Rams.
Yeah, that was in St. Louis, if I remember correctly.
Where's the box score? Is it Torrey? It was Torrey Holt had touchdown against Hester, and then Hester just returned the next one 94 yards.
Ridiculous.
Here we go. A 94-yard kickoff return in St. Louis at the Edward Jones Dome for a touchdown 13 seconds after the Rams went ahead 6-0 on a Torrey Holt TD catch. Devin Hester, just unreal.
And there were times when he was pinned back behind the 10.
Oh, wait, he had 2 returns that day.
Yeah, he did. It was multiple.
Yeah, a 96-yarder.
Yeah, there was multiple. It ended up being a blowout.
Yeah, 42-27 Bears. And Rex Grossman threw for 200 yards and 2 touchdowns.
Woo.
That was back when we had Adrian Peterson at running back.
Yes, that's right. AP before AP.
So
Adrian Peterson.
Yeah, so the NFL totally botched that completely.
Unreal.
Yeah, here, NFL records. most special teams touchdowns in a career, most non-offensive touchdowns in a career, most kickoff and punt return TDs, most punt return TDs, most punt return TDs in a season, most kickoff returns in a TDs in a game, most combined TDs, return TDs in a season, most rookie combined return TDs in a season, most combined return touchdowns in a game, most non-offensive touchdowns in a season, fastest touchdown in Super Bowl history, first Super Bowl opening kick return for a touchdown ever.
The only one.
Mm-hmm.
To this day, the only one.
So,
do you remember when he was wide receiver in 2010 and he made that really great catch in the back of the end zone against the Cowboys, like one-handed it and brought it back in?
Yep.
Boy, and he really killed the Vikings too.
It's a shame. Shame.
Better be in next year. That's all I got to say.
Yeah.
I remember when Hester broke the record for return touchdowns, the game in 2010 against the Vikings when they had to play outside because the roof caved in, and that was the division clincher.
Yep. I believe that was off of Chris Cluey, the punter.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Who is actually a fun follow on Twitter.
I also remember that same year, the one time the Bears did beat the Packers early in the regular season, he scored the game-winning touchdown on a return.
Man, it's crazy to just look at those numbers. How is he not a Hall of Famer?
You don't even need to look at the numbers. Just look at the eye test. Just watch him play.
And like those are just the touchdowns. Look at how many short fields he gave the Bears. Like,
imagine if they didn't have those. I don't know if they go to the Super Bowl.
No.
Didn't they go from Devin Hester to like Mark Mariani or whatever his name was?
I believe so. Yeah, Devin Hester for his career had an 11.7 punt return average. That's just insane. Like the ones that are better than him are all like old timey players, like Billy White Shoes Johnson, Rick Upchurch, Bill Dudley, Claude Gibson, like guys that played in the 40s, 50s, 60s, and 70s. He's tied with Tyreek Hill, but Tyreek Hill is going to go in the Hall of Fame as a wide receiver, so he's probably going to be a Hall of Famer. But then you look in, who in the modern, like there's just, it's unreal. What about his kickoff returns? All-time kickoff return average leaders. I'm not even finding a good source here.
I mean, Devin Hester's on the top of everything, so.
Yeah, this is insane. Yeah, for his career return yards, he had 25 yards per return, kick return. And that was over a 10-year period.
Yeah, there you go.
And there's some people that are better for like a short period, but
The overall career speaks for itself.
yeah. All right, we should quickly talk Bulls and a couple of little Blackhawk things. What do you want to do first?
Blackhawks, they suck. The end.
The Blackhawks stink. Duncan Keith took a nasty spill against the Blackhawks the other night. And Evander Kane is a dirty player.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Marc-Andre Fleury wasn't having it.
But I do want to talk one thing about the Blackhawks. Why are they interviewing non-hockey people for their general manager job?
Oh, yeah. They interviewed the guy from the Cubs. Hey, let's bring the baseball guy to be our GM. I really hope that was just like a picking of the brain of a sports executive and not like seriously considering, hey, you want to try something new? Come be our general manager.
I would think that, except for the fact that they said they're going to be interviewing non-hockey people. It's one
waste
thing.
Of time.
It's one thing if you want to bring in non-hockey people as like a business level, like a Crane Kenny, like sports business. I can see transitioning across because they all function similarly. You know, how sponsorships work, how advertising works, how, television rights work. Okay, I can see having universal skills across sport lines, but being a general manager, no. We've seen how that works when you try to cross sports with general managers. Remember when the Browns did that and they brought in a baseball guy?
Yeah, didn't they bring in somebody from the Mets or something?
Yes, and that worked out horribly. So I totally expect the Blackhawks to do that because that would be par for the direction this organization is heading.
Yeah, that.
And without Jonathan Taves, even with a 4-1 win over an Oilers team that's sputtering like crazy, they only had like a 30% face-off wins.
Yikes.
Oof, this is not a good team. But who is a good team? The Chicago Bulls.
Yeah, and there's a lot of controversy over whether or not they should have made moves. And listen, we saw the East got a whole lot better. The Bucks made a big trade, huge trade between the Nets and the 76ers. Obviously, teams made trades, they got better. And look, I'm not saying they should or shouldn't have made a deal, but it's really difficult when half your team is out and you don't have the ammunition to pull off a ton of trades. You can make something work through 3-team deals and whatnot, but really difficult decision for AK to make a deal. And you consider the fact that one of the guys that was on the in the trade rumors was Patrick Williams, and it's kind of hard to give up on him so soon. Kobe White as well, where you need a point guard, you need somebody that can score off the bench, and Kobe White has provided that. So really tough decision to be in for the Bulls. And if it doesn't work this year, then maybe in the offseason you make more moves, whether it's trades, signings, whatever. So I mean, it's not like this is a one and done opportunity for the Bulls. So I could see the argument for wanting to stand pat and liking your team for when it all comes together. But I could also see the argument of saying, you know what, you're in a window, you want to try to win. It's just really hard when you have so many hurt players in the situation you're in.
Yeah, here's the thing is you don't know how it's a depleted team with the injuries. So if you make these trades, are you throwing good money at bad, basically? Because do you expect to compete this year with all of the injuries that you've had? Maybe not. I don't know if I feel confident enough to trade away young players and draft picks that you're already deficient for a rental piece. On the other hand, you're looking at this as the Patrick Williams, Lonzo Ball, and Alex Caruso are going to be your trade deadline pieces, because we have the news that all three will be back during the regular season. Lonzo Ball and Alex Caruso probably in mid to late March. So we'll still have 15 or so games before postseason for them to come and acclimate. And Patrick Williams, he'll be back before the end of the season as well. So you're going to get those guys back. Also, there's going to be guys that are going to get bought out of their contracts. And I think the Bulls would be a prime candidate to bring some of those guys in. Guys like Robin Lopez, Paul Millsap, Tristan Thompson, Goran Dragic. So these are guys that the Bulls potentially could bring in as after they're bought out, where you're not having to give up trade capital, and you're not signing them long term. So those are things Bulls can do. And the plus sign is the Suns are the best team in the NBA. And you hung with them being absolutely decimated with your roster.
Yeah, I mean, I was surprised it ended up being as close as it was.
I mean, they roared back in that fourth quarter, and only ended up losing by a bucket. And they're still with, I don't know what they're doing tonight right now, but I think Zach is out tonight. But you have Patrick Williams and Lonzo Ball and Caruso
Bulls
out.
Literally just won.
Okay. But you got Derek Jones Jr. back, I believe, tonight. He was going to be available.
Yes.
So you're starting to get some guys back, and you're still winning. They're still second in the East, only a game out of being the best record in the East with all of those injuries. I mean, starting to bunch up a bit. The Heat are tops. Bulls are one game behind. The Cavs are a game and a half. Bucks a game and a half, and the Sixers are 2 games back.
It's tight. The top of the East is very tight. So every single win means the world. It doesn't matter who you're playing. You could be beating OKC. You could be beating Minnesota. You could be beating the Magic. You could be beating the Cavs. It doesn't matter. Every win is huge with how tight this is.
Yeah. So just holding off all of these teams and, being able to beat the teams you're supposed to beat. Like tonight, shouldn't have been a game that, they lost, but, being depleted and, you look at the top guys playing so many minutes, they just get tired. And, you sometimes lose those games that you should win. So it's being able to win these games you're supposed to win, and then pulling out as many as you can against the good teams. That's all you can ask for,
Yeah. And I mean, the thing too is you played back-to-back nights as well. You played the Timberwolves last night, and then you played OKC tonight. So, back-to-back nights, back-to-back wins, that's got to be a great feeling for this team. It's hard to play on back-to-back nights, and they looked a little sluggish coming out in the first quarter. It looked like it's going to be one of those games, but for them to come roaring back from the big deficits they had tonight, really nice win.
I mean, but look at the starting roster they put in. Is Ayo DeSumo, DeMar DeRozan, Kobe White, Nikola Vucevic, and Brown. Troy Brown is like that's your starting roster. You got 9 points off the bench, and you had to have another stellar game from DeMar DeRozan to win this game. And DeMar DeRozan, that makes 5 games in a row of 35 points or more.
It's awesome. Got to be in MVP conversations. I mean,
if he's not, it's silly. He's so good.
No, but the national media has to keep fawning over New York and LA. And neither New York or LA is impressing at all. Look at New York, who everybody loves so much. The Knicks aren't doing that great from what I've gathered. The Nets are on that horrific losing streak.
The Knicks currently are 12th out of 15 teams in the East.
There you go. And then you have the Lakers. They're just completely crumbling.
The Lakers are LeBron is a very good player. He's not a very good GM, and they would be out of the playoffs if the playoffs started today, and they have a losing record.
Yeah, so they don't want to give Chicago credit, but the Lakers, the Knicks, the Nets.
The Nets.
I'm very tonight for some reason. I don't know why.
And I'm curious of what the 76ers will look like with James Harden.
Yeah, that'll be interesting.
I hope it's a bad dynamic.
Him and Embiid, I don't know. How long before they go at each other's throats?
Yeah, did he play tonight?
I mean, Embiid was pretty glad that Simmons was gone, from what I gathered.
Yeah, no. So the Sixers played tonight, and Harden did not play, and Joel Embiid dropped 40 in that, beating the Cleveland Cavaliers.
Oh wow!
And
we can't beat Joel Embiid.
No, I keep saying I think that's a bad matchup.
It is
76ers and the Bulls, and that's why I would like to see. I would like to see some, them sign another big defender from the buyout list, or whoever actually gets bought out. That would go a huge way. And helping the Bulls be able to beat a team like the 76ers. Like, I think they can beat the Heat. I think they could beat the Cavs and the Bucks. And when they play the Bucks, if they play the Bucks in the postseason, it's going to be personal.
Oh, of course.
I mean, honestly, I think they can beat everybody in the East. I think the 76ers are going to be the tough one.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Cavaliers are going to be tough too.
Cavaliers are going to be, I think that's going to be a good series. I think the Bulls are just better.
If they're fully healthy, yes.
Yeah, if they're fully healthy, they're going to, they'll beat the Cavaliers. But just could depend on what the health looks like.
Hopefully it's close to or at 100%.
Yeah. And so if we're looking at the true timetables of Lonzo and Caruso coming back, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4. They're backwards. $13 more games without them.
Got to get through it.
Yep. And then you're looking at 12 games with them back to wrap up the season. So, and then Patrick Williams, we'll see. Hoping he comes back for those last handful of games, to get himself back into shape for the postseason. But, I'm looking. The Spurs, You got the Spurs, not so good. Sacramento's bad. Atlanta's not so good. Memphis is good. That's gonna be a tough one. Miami's good. It's a tough one. Atlanta, not so good. Bucks is gonna be a tough one. Sixers, tough one. Detroit, not so good. Cavaliers, tough one. Sacramento, bad. Utah, it's gonna be a tough one. So you've got a lot of winnable games in there. So
Got to take advantage of what you can.
Yeah, you got to take advantage of multiple games against Sacramento, and you've got, let's see, Spurs are bad, Sacramento's bad, Atlanta's not good. So those 1, 2, 3. Memphis, Miami good, Atlanta not, Bucks good, 76ers good. You've got Detroit's not good. Cleveland is good. Sacramento not good. So you've got more than half of those games are against bad teams that you should be able to come out with these, at least stay in the top 4 until you get Lonzo and Caruso back.
Yep. Just take the wins you can, get them back, get them healthy. I know a lot of people have that game against the Bucks in early March circled for obvious reasons.
March 4th.
So, yep, March 4th. There you go.
Yep. What'll be nice is between so they got 2 more games here against Spurs and Sacramento, and then you get a big break. So that'll be good for the Bulls, especially playing so many minutes for their top guys.
Yeah, no kidding.
But that's really all I had to talk about. Anything else you wanted to bring up?
No, I think I've said my piece.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for this episode of Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago. I want to thank everybody so much for listening. Please hit subscribe however you listen to podcasts, whether it's iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, Google Play, Spotify, etc. Share this podcast with your friends. It's how we grow the show. Follow us on social media at Swerski Sports, Facebook.com/Swerski Sports, SwerskiSports.com. For all of the cool stuff that Alex does, AlexanderJPatCreative.com. And again, thank you guys so much for listening. Until next time, bear down.
Cubs win! What a lucky break! The good Lord wants the Cubs to win!
We thank Ditka and God for all they have provided.
Cubs win! Cubs win! Cubs win!
Oh, I don't want her. You can have her. She's a Packer fan. She can't fit in my van.
And she looks like number New Yorkers. Smoking crack is not legal on planes. Bears 31 to -7. The Bears. Oh, when the Bears go bearing down, I wanna